Hi, I just wanted to give you a few tips on teaching using Zoom. Okay, so when you've set up your Zoom meeting, it should look a bit something like this. In order to see who's in the lesson, then you need to click onto participants. You'll then have a list of participants on your screen, so you'll have yourself and then a list of the students with the names that they've given themselves. In order to change some of the settings, which I recommend you do, you need to go onto this more arrow here. So on here, you can tick to have participants muted when they enter the meeting. I would recommend that you do that and that you don't allow participants to unmute themselves, so uncheck that box. And that way, they'll be muted as soon as they come in and they can't actually do it themselves. You can also change some of these other settings. I'm not going to allow them to rename themselves. That's a distraction. And I'm going to leave the waiting room enabled. No, I'm going to get rid of the waiting room because I don't want to be faffing around letting people join during the lesson. So I'm going to leave those like that. Second thing you might want to do is have a look at the chat box. So if you open that, you can see here you can chat. You've got options here to chat with either everyone or an individual student privately. So you need to be careful who you're actually messaging and look at that carefully. You've also got some other options here about the chat. So the participant can chat with. I think the best thing to have it set at the beginning of a meeting would be host only. So they could send a message to the host only to me if there's a problem. It's useful to have the chat on to the host so they can deal with that. But if that's becoming a problem, you can change it to no one and then they can't communicate with anyone at all. There might be times in the lesson when you want them to be able to send a message that everyone in the whole class can see. It might be that you're answering a question and you want them to see each other's answers. That's quite useful. You would then change it to everyone publicly. That way, everyone in the class can see the chat. The one I wouldn't ever use would be this everyone publicly and privately, because that would mean that students can message one another privately whilst you're teaching, and that's not a good idea. So I'm going to leave that as host only. So I might say to everyone at the start of the lesson, is everyone okay? Everyone ready to go? They can either send a message saying yes, or they could do a reaction. My student's going to react now with a thumbs up because hopefully she's ready to go. There we go. She's all ready to go. So you can check everyone's ready. You could also use that during the lesson. Oh, she's put her hand up. It's down again. You could also do that during the lesson to make sure that everyone's on board and they know what you're doing. You could use the thumbs up if they've got it, or they can write a question to you. So there's plenty of uses for that. The other thing you might want to do is record your lesson. So you would use this button here to record the lesson. That would record an audio and video of your whole lesson, and that way you could share that with students who've missed the session, and it would save you from following up later on. Right, so let's get on with the lesson. So the thing I'm going to need to do is to share my screen. In order to do that, I need to make sure that before I've started the lesson, that I've got all the tabs open that I want to have during that lesson. So these are the 3 tabs on my computer here that I want to have open during the lesson. That's the first one that I'm going to go for, and I'm going to go for screen sharing with that. So I click on this green button, share screen. It gives me options. I'm going to share my entire desktop so they can see everything whenever I need them to, and I'm going to click on share. I'm then going to go to present, and I'm going to start presenting my lesson. Okay, so on this particular slide, I've got my title, I've got some information that we might talk through, and I've got a question. I probably do quite a bit of chatting and setting up the scene of what we're going to do during this. I might have a few bits of vocab from here that I would want them to note down, and I might want to write. Now, it's useful to be able to annotate this as you go. So if you just hover your mouse where the green tab is, you'll get some other options. So the annotate option is the one I'm going to show you here. So if you click on annotate, you've got several choices of how to annotate. The easiest way is to pick the text symbol. You can then click anywhere onto your presentation and a text box will appear. Bear in mind that whilst you're typing, not all students on all devices can see it until you've clicked off that text box again. Some of them can see it whilst you're typing and some can't. It just depends what device they're on. So I'm going to type that the meaning of the word Festnetz is landline. because they wouldn't have known that. Once I click off that box like that, everyone can now see that, and they've got that extra bit of information. So you might make a few notes there that you want them to write down. If I wanted to get rid of that, or I'd made a mistake, I can then go onto the box, the symbol here, select. That allows me then to reselect that. I can use my backspace and that deletes it. You can draw on here as well, so you can use the draw tool to draw different shapes. You've got the eraser as well. You can play around there and see what you can do. To get rid of that information, click on the X. Okay, so I've set the scene, I've done the first part of my lesson, I've told them what they're doing. I now want to carry on with my lesson onto the next slide. So I'm going to go on to slide 2. And I've got here a question: what do you use your mobile for the most? Now this is an early lesson in this whole technology section. They need the vocabulary. We haven't learned that yet. I've not inputted the vocab. So I've put a link on here. It says click here for the vocab. Now what this is going to do is give them the link to Quizlet, where they've got the key vocab for this unit. And that's what I've decided to share with them. Now, I need them to have access to that link quickly and easily. So if I, again, hover my mouse where the green button is here, I can go on this More option and I can open the chat. This will bring the chat up small on my screen, so I can access that at the same time as screen sharing. The students can't see that chat now. All they can see is the main screen that I was sharing behind them. I'm going to click for the vocabulary. That's now going to open up Quizlet for them. And I'm going to use the share button when it's loaded up. Come on. Where's it gone? I'm going to use the share button here. And I'm going to copy the link. And then I'm going to put that link into here. Make sure that it's on everyone for the chat. Return, and all my students will now get that vocabulary link. I could then say to the students, right, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I'd like you to click on that link, practice the vocabulary, or I could show them and we could do it together at the same time. So we've got 2 options, either for them to get on quietly with it whilst you have a little rest, or you could actually do it together. You might go on the Learn section and you could go through headphones, right, type in the chat which is the one for headphones and see who could be the fastest. They can have a practice. It's up to you how you do that then. So once I've done that, I'm going to cross off the chat there. I'm going to go back to my lesson. They've had 5 minutes practicing the vocab. We're going to move on to the 3rd slide. So, sorry, just some pictures. This 3rd slide, I now want them to send me some information. So the question is still there. What do you use your mobile for the most? They should now have practiced this vocab using Quizlet, so they should be familiar with it. I'm going to ask them to type me an answer into the chat of what they use their mobile for the most. So again, on the screen share, I'm going on the More, I'm reopening the chat. I'm going to give them a model answer first of all. So I'm going to say, I use mine handy, and then I'm going to choose one of the options. I'm going to say zum telefonieren. And then I'm just going to press return. They can all then see my model answer, and I'm going to ask them all to type in their answers, and I should see however many people are in the class sending in their sentences to practice. You can actually save this chat at the end of the lesson as well and download it, so that you've got the evidence there of who's joined the lesson and who's been joining in, which might be quite useful. Also quite useful if there's been a problem on the chat. Right, so that's the option for getting them to share things via chat. I also then need them to, on the next slide, get on with some translation. Okay, so I've got some translation work here that I want them to do. Now, the easiest way that I've found to do this is to use the Google Classroom. So I'm going to minimize my presentation now, and I'm going to talk to them about opening up their Google Classroom so they can open up the classroom whilst they're still on the Zoom conversation. I've put an assignment here for them, the live lesson, and they can see here they've got the slideshow that I've been talking them through, and they've also got a document in the top corner which they can then use to answer the questions. On that document, I've put the translations in from here, so these translations are on that document. They can type their answers and I'll get them in real time, so instantly. So I can give them feedback as we're working. I would maybe give them 15 minutes to get on with that, and they can then show me what they can do. And I'd be able to look at it whilst they're doing it. That would be then the end of my lesson. There's plenty of other things you can share via the Zoom lesson. So you could, just as I've shown you before using Active Learn, you can also share, so other websites where you might have other learning, BBC Bite Size you could send them to. There's many other places that you could send them, and then you can find a way of getting them to give you some information. So it might be that you do a BBC Bite Size quiz and say, can you all send me your scores once you've done on the chat? That'll also give you a sense of how long it's taken them so that you can see. Okay, so going back to the Zoom meeting, I'm now ready to finish. Hold on, not there. Going back, where's it gone? I'm going to click stop share. That's going to stop me sharing my screen, and I go back to my usual, and then they can just see the original. And we're going to say goodbye. Thank you very much. I would stop the recording, and that would mean that I could leave the lesson and press end. If I want to save the chat, I can click on this down here, and this would enable me here to save the chat before I've ended the lesson, and that way I've got a copy of that too. So end the lesson, end meeting for all, and we're finished. So I hope that's helped and has given you a little bit of some ideas of what you could do. There's so many other things that you could do, and I'm sure you've got some even better ideas than me. See you later.